All right, everybody, here we are to start off today's video, and we are going to be mapping out the Bitcoin sell-off that has been taking place over the last week. What has caused it? When are we going to be bottoming? What does the short-term price action look like? And how can we look at the market now and get a good idea for how to play it moving over the next couple months? Right off the bat, guys, the reason the market is pulling back, Germany is actually taking profits on some of their seized Bitcoin. They had over $2 billion worth of Bitcoin at one time, and they've actually sold about half of it. Germany still holds 23,800 Bitcoin worth 1.3 billion. Their sell pressure equates to 5% of Bitcoin's 24-hour trade volume, and they've been selling since about mid-June. We've had a lot of fear around the Mt. Gox situation. You know, they've actually began liquidating some of their Bitcoin, but now we've actually heard that Germany has been doing the exact same thing. So over the last month, Germany's also been liquidating some of their seized Bitcoin, and they actually seized it from an illegal piracy website, and at the time it was about 50,000 Bitcoin that those people had since 2013. So they just barely seized all of that, and then that's where they've basically began starting to take profits, starting to liquidate all of those reserves. We can see that the price has declined about 20%, and we're seeing the market still continuing to go down in the sell-off. Now we can come over here and we can track the government's holdings, and we can see that they're currently sitting at about $1.3 billion. Now we can see that their balances all the way at the peak before they started selling was about $3.6 billion. So it's declined quite a bit. And if we come down in here, we can actually see all of the Bitcoin that they've deposited to which exchanges. 900 to Coinbase, 1.4 thousand to Bitstamp, 900 to Kraken. You got Flow Traders at 3.5 thousand, another Flow Traders at 700, the Bitstamp 400, Coinbase 600. So we can see that they've deposited a number of Bitcoin throughout all the biggest exchanges inside of the market. So they've actually began selling their seized Bitcoin, and it's caused the market to pull back. Now, in my last update, we were really just centered around what happens around this Wyckoff accumulation, right? And that's been my main focus point, because we know that when we were sitting all the way up here and we started to lose this 67K level, I told you guys how there's a very real potential we could be revisiting all the way back down to this main support line. And once we revisited it right here in this main sell-off, I said how it's still possible we can see one more final shakeout before this is over, because sometimes in a Wyckoff they'll actually go below our main support. So we can see that this was the lowest point that we made, and for our Wyckoff to actually be dragging lower, it shows that this is a little bit more volatile than initially expected. And if we remove our drawing tools, this is pretty much what we're looking at here. We're still following the same pattern. The only difference here is we're getting a deeper shakeout into the bottom of this phase C, because inside of a Wyckoff, you're going to have these three lower lows, and they can vary. Sometimes it could be three lower lows. Sometimes they just kind of hold the support. You never really know, but we're just watching to see how it's playing out. And we can see that we had our two main lows here. Now, for us to actually be sweeping below these, it's pretty normal with your Wyckoff, because you're oftentimes going to see these three lower lows. We had a low, we had a lower low, and now this is going to be the third spring-loaded bounce before we do end up getting that reversal. The question just comes, where is that reversal going to be taking us, right? Because we have the potential of bottoming roughly where we're at right now. We're still sitting here right at that main cycle low. We closed bullish here, right? We had this big sell-off, and we ended up closing all the way back above that same level. We had a big green candle come in here, but then the next day we had this big bearish candle close on the daily and then knock us all the way back down below that same level. So with us actually getting another rejection here based off of this selling of the Bitcoin by the German government, it's looking like this is actually losing this main support, and we do have the potential of one more final shakeout coming in. The thing that I'm watching when it comes to factoring around all of the Bitcoin sell-off around this Germany dump that they're doing, taking profits on all of their seized Bitcoins and whatnot, the thing that we have to be aware of is they've sold about half of their bag at this point, so they're only sitting at about half of what they had. So the sell pressure only equates to about 5% of Bitcoin's 24-hour trade volume. So all of this added sell pressure is mainly just fear, uncertainty, and doubt from people that are freaking out. Oh no, Germany's going to go crash the market. I better hurry and get out. The real sell pressure is really just around the fact that Germany's selling and then everybody's rushing the exits to go do the same thing. So it's really just enhancing all of this sell pressure. With us sitting right here at these range lows, we can still chop around here and kind of just go anywhere. If Bitcoin were to bounce in the shorter time frames, we can still technically reclaim this level. But with this rejection in here looking more like a rejection than anything, I do think we have the real potential of us actually selling off for one more final low in here. Really kind of just completing this capitulation before we get that reversal. Because all we're really looking at on the higher time frames is just a big picture A, B, and a C correction. We're finishing out the bottom of this wave C. Our Elliott wave count can actually go a couple different ways. The way I was kind of looking at this was being either a 1, and this was wave 3 and 4, 4 with us actually inside of our final wave 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116 This was wave 1, this was wave 3, and we're getting that final push right here. It doesn't really change anything. Both of these are kind of showing that we're in some type of 4-wave-ish correction before we get one more final sort of move to the downside. I think that this final move will be enhanced based off of Germany liquidating the remainder of their Bitcoin holdings, because they've been selling for like a month at this point, since June of the last month. So with them actually taking profits on half of their holdings, and then with that only equating 5% of the sell volume, it wasn't really like Germany was knocking the price of Bitcoin down that low. They're 5% on the daily, which is, hundreds of millions of dollars technically so far. That really didn't do that big of an impact inside of the market. So when we're talking about the idea of them actually liquidating the remainder of their holdings, I think it's a little bit more likely that this final sell-off, if we do get a final sell-off, it's not going to be as big as the most recent ones that we've went through getting up to this point. We are approaching the very ending of this correction based off of Elliott wave theory. And when I zoom out, the final hurdle, or what I should say, the final support that I think we could end up tagging is just basically the top of this lower high, right? Because this has been the main level I've been watching for. Once we ended up holding support all the way back up in here, I didn't think that we were going to need to revisit all the way back down to tag that lower high again. But as we can see, that we ended up making that final sort of capitulation. I do think that it's more likely that we will come and actually tag this final level before this is over. We don't really have any liquidity in this entire range right here, because we've been sitting inside of this range, right? Ping-ponging back and forth in here. Now that we've broken from that range, or so it looks to be, I think the next potential is just us coming right back down to tag this lower high. And I'm not really anticipating us to just kind of chop inside of this like for a long time. I'm much more leaning towards us actually getting a full reversal and starting that next big breakout into price discovery. Because what this structure looks like, it looks a lot like the price of gold. And if we remember, when we were consolidating all the way back up to these prior all-time highs in gold cycle, we rallied all the way back up to them, and then we made this little ABC correction. And this was the final wave C that we had before we went into price discovery, and that's where we're at today. So when I zoom out and look at Bitcoin, I see a lot of the same similarities in structure. We rallied off of the lows, went all the way back up to the range highs. Yeah, we didn't go quite as high as gold, but all we're doing is just finishing that final wave C. And if you guys notice here on gold, that wave C didn't really go very much below that wave A. And we could be at a very similar point inside of our current structure, right? Where we're sitting right below, technically speaking, we're sitting right below that range low support, and we can bottom virtually at any point right down in here. For me, I was always watching the Wyckoff. With us revisiting this support, I knew that we were bullish ever since we basically hit 58, 59K. And so my big thing was, well, we're either going to see one more big shakeout lower from that support, or this is the bottom. And so with us actually looking like we're maybe making one more final shakeout, this is the one that I'm leaning towards. So it's not really changing anything, guys. I do believe that once this correction is over, even if it means that we come all the way back down to like 48, 47 and a half thousand, I think the reversal to the upside is going to happen a lot quicker than most people expect, because we've spent so much time ranging, like 4 months ranging right here. I think a lot of people are going to expect that we're going to take a lot of time to kind of break down. If we're losing this support, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at it as us actually falling all the way back down to like 30K, making these huge sort of correction type charts. And I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that with these final little shakeouts in these wave Cs, they don't have to really break that far below support, right? Wave A supports 56,500. We don't really have to even go that far below it to complete this correction. We could actually bottom where we're at right now based off of the Wyckoff. So it doesn't really change anything on the bigger picture. The only thing that's changing is determining whether we get one more final shakeout. And it does kind of make sense that we would see one final shakeout as Germany actually looks to liquidate the rest of their Bitcoin holdings. That's just what I'm leaning towards. My guess is once you get around the 75% mark, around all of the Bitcoin holdings from Germany actually being liquidated, I think that most people are going to be jumping back into the market, because like we said, guys, we can see all the way down here, 50 million, 79, 114, 50, 200. These are all outflows that are going to sell on the market. Yet all of these sells only equated for like 5% of Bitcoin's 24-hour trade volume. So my guess is once Germany gets to being like 3/4 out of their bag, people are going to rush to start buying the dip. They're going to be speculating, oh, well, they're almost out. The dip's probably over. There's not going to be any more fear. And my guess is that will probably happen in this final sell-off, if we even get it, because it's still equally as much of a possibility that we just hold where we're at right now. We haven't technically broken below it in any sort of sizable move, but we are getting very close to that. You know, the more that we're hugging at these range lows, the more it's looking like we have actually rejected below wave A. And then the more that we're rejecting below wave A, the more I think that we're just setting ourselves up for a potential retest of this lower high at 48,000. That to me is where Bitcoin would bottom. We can come over and look at the total market cap, and we can see a lot of the same similarities. I was expecting that we were going to hold this level being the top of this lower high at 2.17 trillion. We were unable to do that even though we had a number of different reactions on this, and we've successfully broken back below that level. So when I'm looking at this, if Bitcoin were to revisit all the way back down to 48,000, I lean towards the potential that this would probably be falling all the way back down to about 1.69 trillion. This thing would make one more final shakeout like this, and then we'd probably do something like this as we ended up reversing into another new all-time high. But the setups are all the same. All we're looking at here is a big ABC correction. Now we can actually get a target in here. If we go from the top of wave A, we can actually measure wave A, and then oftentimes that's going to give you the same length inside of the correction wave B. And we can see that we've already finished that extension. So technically speaking, the wave C could already be completed right here. We already have the equal extension inside of wave A and wave B. We already have the equal extension of wave A inside of wave C. Now the question is just going to come, do we end up making one more final low before that correction is over? Really, guys, for me, it doesn't matter. I have both of my cars that I'm actually listing for sale right now. I have 3 of them, but 2 of them just kind of sit there, and so I'm actually taking profits on those cars. And then I'm going to be looking to put it all back into the market because I've been waiting for an opportunity like this. I kind of thought that this was going to be the deepest correction that we got. So now that we're sitting at another lower low, I'm doing everything that I can to buy this dip. I'm literally selling anything that I possibly can as far as assets go, rotating capital in other markets like the stock market that I've been sitting on for a long time. I'm rotating that back into the crypto markets. I've never been this excited about the markets because I didn't think that we were going to be getting this big of a correction, right? Because we took off so quick, it was looking like we could be actually going into a new all-time high much quicker than anything that we've ever seen. So the fact that we're not and we're selling off, it gives me a lot of confidence to jump back into the market, you know, take all the cash that I possibly have and go back into these markets because of the fact we have ETFs, we have governments that are buying Bitcoin. Yeah, governments are selling it at the same time, but for the most part, mainly just buying the Bitcoin. We're seeing banks adopting it. Governments are being pro-crypto at this point, leading into elections. Everything we need to see for a big bull run is playing out. And so for me, because we are getting a deeper correction, I'm more excited to buy that dip. All I see on the higher time frames are your typical ABC corrections. The only difference is we could be looking at one more final low before that takes place, which is why I say, guys, I'm actually listing my 2 of my cars for sale. I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to be putting all of that money back into the markets because the opportunity you get by buying these dips, especially if we're talking a quick reversal, because guys, these ABC corrections, once they reverse, they pretty much do stuff like this. And so I don't think we have a lot of time to buy these dips because once the dip gets bought, it's pretty much just going to be straight into a new all-time high. I can share with you guys prior cycles and how these ABC corrections have played out. My favorite cycle is obviously going to be 2017 because we had so many of these little ABC corrections along the entire way up. And this is why I always say, you know, these are very easy patterns to identify. It doesn't take an expert, but you're going to see them play out all the time inside of these markets. For example, this was this was an ABC, and we can see that wave C barely even went below wave A, right? It's super volatile ABC. We can come up and see the exact same thing played out right over here. A, B, C. Wave C and wave A held the exact same support. So you're going to see a variance. Sometimes wave C can dip a little bit lower. Sometimes they can hold the same support. Sometimes wave A is going to be shorter and wave C is going to be a little bit longer. We never truly know. But the universal correction that the bull market takes on the way up are these little ABC corrections all the entire way, right? And then even into our bear market consolidation, we still did the same sort of thing. This thing was also just a big A, B, and a C. So these markets have a tendency to follow these type of patterns. And when we're just basically completing our first corrective pattern to begin this new cycle, I'm not really too worried about it. I'm looking for one more low because that's what it's looking like Germany's going to be able to do when they liquidate the rest of their Bitcoin holdings. When they liquidate the rest of their 1.3, it's looking like Bitcoin very easily could drag for that final low. And if we're looking at Bitcoin dragging for a final low, the altcoins are going to do the same thing. And the total market cap looks like it's going to be heading around 1.7 trillion. You know, looking over here at the total altcoin market cap before we finish up this video, you know, overall, this is in the exact same territory as all the other charts. This one rejected off the top of its lower high versus the altcoin, or what I should say, the total market cap actually held support, and Bitcoin was actually way above that. So when we're looking at the altcoins, they actually rallied all the way up to tag that level and then reject. So as it stands, when I'm looking at the altcoin chart, I'm not going to be surprised to see the altcoins actually come all the way back down to revisit sort of this bear market accumulation, right? This was the bear market range high. We broke out of that and retested that. I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if we're to see Bitcoin make one more final lower low along with the total market cap. Then the altcoins themselves should do the same thing, and we might as well end up all the way back down to the same sort of consolidation range. And if we don't come all the way back down to the green box, maybe we just come down to like the mid-cycle point of that being like 775 billion before we start that reversal. But it doesn't change anything. All of these are the same setup, right? We saw 5 waves out of the low, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now all we're doing is just finishing that first little ABC corrective move after 5 waves to the upside. So when you're looking at this, it literally shouldn't change anything. The only thing you should be aware of is we've only got really one more big shakeout, I would say, one more 5-10% drop in the market before that reversal is over. I find it very, very, very much likely that if the altcoin total market cap is going to revisit this level, it's not going to break below it, right? Think about how long that we spent consolidating below this range for us to finally break out of it. This was like a 650-day accumulation range, right? So 530 days it took us, and then it was like 600 once we actually flipped that. So when we're looking at it finally revisiting this level for the first time since the breakout, just do your part by buying that dip. Don't get too shaken out. Don't get worried about all of the FUD around the Mt. Gox and the Germany unlocks and all of this stuff. It really only looks like we've got one more push to the downside max before these things start reversing. And I'm telling you guys, if you're able to buy back down in here, even if you bought where we're at right now, assuming we don't even go lower, to the range high, it's 40%, and to the all-time highs, you're looking at 88%. That's the total altcoin market cap. You know, if the total market cap is going to go up 40 and 80% from here, you're talking about the best performing altcoins pulling a 1 and 3x in those same time frames. So I think that these things are getting ready for more of the same that we've always been expecting. The only difference is we just have to finish out this final correction inside of this wave C before we're going to finally be at that point of reversing. But all of the charts are showing the same conclusions. You know, we're sitting right here at this range low. Let's see how Bitcoin holds up inside of this Wyckoff accumulation, because if we were to hold up really strong right down in here, we could still technically reverse off of this the level that we're at right now, but we're pretty much right at that last moment and opportunity where we can do that. If we start dragging any lower in the shorter time frames, I'm definitely leaning towards us actually making one more final low, but we're just right here at that same level. It's too close to really count it right now, but you know, if this daily closes another bearish candle, we close below this wave A, then at that point I am leaning towards us making one more final flush to the downside before this is over. You know, the altcoin total market caps, they're all just going to follow whatever Bitcoin does, and so we need to be aware, be prepared, and be positioned, guys, because big picture, I'm still bullish that I'm literally selling all of my personal assets that I have to go into the market again. So if that doesn't give you confidence, I don't know what will. You know, at the end of the day, all we can do is buy these dips. Any dip below a prior all-time high is a blessing, and I'm looking at it as that. So with that being said, guys, if you found value in this video, please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. If you want to see anything I'm investing in long-term, anything I'm buying inside of this dip, links are in the description. Go ahead and sign up on my website. I'd love to have you guys in there. We're going to be nailing a lot of these trades in the bottom of this dip, buying all of my favorite altcoins, accumulating, probably going to be the last time in this cycle before we actually go into price discovery. So if you want to see my portfolio, see my top 10 picks that I'm working with, what altcoins I think could actually do 50 to 100x potential this cycle, links are in the description. Go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.